On this episode, we cover recent market, weather, and planting updates. Wondering about the status of your crop that's already planted, or when the right time will come back around to plant your corn and soybeans? Stay tuned to hear how we weigh in on these hot topics.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Cup of Joe, episode number 27. Today we have Tommy Johns, Turk Rigginator, and Ben Pieper here to talk about some of the things that are probably on your mind this week after this wet week. Let's start with Turk first. Got anything optimistic?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the Chinese trade agreement. I know we've been talking about that, and it was announced this week that they feel that by the end of next week we'll have something concrete to announce. So that's positive news. And then on another note that I picked up that Japan is actually very close to having a trade agreement as well, and they feel by May 25th that'll be concrete and etched in stone. And actually, President Trump is scheduled to go to Japan and look for something to possibly happen by then. So that's all positive news. Obviously, the grain markets have been taking a beating because of all the wet weather and the trade always overreacts to everything, and so don't panic here. Don't let the fear of the market going down cause you to react to the market. So keep in mind that we still have on this crop that we're planting this next year. We still have federal crop rates in place at 9.54 on soybeans, and so don't go crazy. I know there's people talking about $6 soybeans in the sixes, but if it does, that would be a great buying opportunity. That's for sure. But so obviously the elephant in the room is going to be the weather, and there's still rain in the forecast for the next week in most areas. That from Texas to northern Illinois is kind of a trough that's just going to keep getting rain and rain and rain coming across there. There's areas down there that's had over 10 inches of rain, and there's probably more possibly in the forecast. But the good news is it's getting warmer down there, and we have longer drying periods, so things can happen pretty quick when it does dry up. Parts of our area are actually dry, believe it or not. Visiting with one of our salesmen in Nebraska, and they said they actually have the pivots running out there because of dry weather, and a lot of farmers overreacted and mudded it in, and now those guys are wishing they hadn't have done that because they're running the pivots and trying to get that ground that's packed down and almost like concrete now to loosen up and try and get the crop out of the ground. So the message is don't overreact, don't mud it in. We still have an opportunity to get the crop planted in a timely way. I read an article that 42% of farmers can plant their crop in less than 10 days. So the key is plant it under the right soil conditions, and probably maybe need to adjust your cropping plan a little bit to take advantage of planting date. In other words, getting that crop in a good soil conditions in a timely manner is more important than get the fertilizer put on, because you can always put on fertilizer. But you probably have some comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways with all the equipment that the ag retail industry has now to get your dry fertilizer put on, to get your to get any form of nitrogen that you want on. I listened to a talk that Greg Sauter had about how, maybe these guys that don't have their nitrogen on yet, they might be sitting better than the guys that put their anhydrous on, because those guys might be out money where you're having ponding in some of these areas. So there's a lot of really smart people out there with a lot of good technology. That fertilizer is the least of the worries, because as we were talking here before the show, what's going to happen as the days get longer and we're starting to see temperatures in the 70s and 80s, things dry out a lot quicker. We have longer days. We are going to get a point where we can get the crop put in the right way. The calendar date doesn't bother me at this point yet.
So let's talk about some of the crop that is planted. Now we're in cold soils, cold conditions. Do you have any comments about what was planted and what are things that we need to keep an eye on?
Yes, I do have. I spent a lot of time on the phone with guys that are very concerned that had, flooding conditions or, torrential downpours. And the crop that is in the ground, corn particularly, that I want to talk about, because I think there's a lot more corn, especially in my area, that went in the ground before the soybeans did. And the corn that is in the ground, as long as it did not imbibe cold water, 24 hours after you planted it, 24 to 36 hours, as long as that water temp was above 38, 35 degrees, somewhere in that point, as long as the water temp was above that point, that plant still has plenty of vigor left in it. Because what happens when a soybean plant or a corn plant imbibes cold water, that plant has to swell, and the cell walls that have to do all the fast all the regrowth and cell division that has to happen, that can't happen when the water temperatures are too cold inside the plant. So as long as the corn or the soybeans were put in the ground and the temperature was in the right condition, we should be sitting okay.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And the other thing too is on our soybean side, because I know some farmers that planted soybeans, and I've had calls too, and they said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, that's where the turbidity, the biostimulants that we put on, they are designed to help that the right nutrients, the right amino acids, and different ingredients that are not biological. They're hard chemistry. They are designed to be right there at the embryo to give the embryo what it needs when it's under stress." And so the whole idea behind it is to get it through that stress period, keep it uniform, keep that emergence as uniform as possible. And again, that's Trupidity, and it's a product that we use and that almost everybody else is not using. And that's the latest thing to help in these conditions, is to get that uniformity. So I think you're right, Ben, and we've been through this before, and I think it's, Tommy, you've got probably some tips. What are the key things when you're getting a little bit worried, like we are right now, about how can we get through it?
I think, from a psychological standpoint, I guess the best thing you do is stay calm. Don't make rash decisions, just like Turk said, when guys were getting worried, and especially in some of those areas where Nebraska, when they were mudding in the crop, and now they're having to deal with breaking up crust with their pivots, and they're dry now. I bet they wish they waited. Now, at the end of the day, the main thing is not to panic. Stay the course with the cropping plan that you had planned. Maybe make a few adjustments, but don't make those rash decisions. And you have some statistics on soybeans and as far as planting dates and yield potential.
Let's just talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I've always said the two most critical times in a soybean's life are emergence and then rain during pod fill. I did not say planting date, did I? And that's because the weather after planting determines the yield, and that's that critical time. So as it gets later, looking at right through the core of the soybean and corn belt through the Midwest here, even if we plant a month from now, our yield reduction is on average about 5 to 6% a month from now, and I don't think it's going to rain for a month. So we have plenty of time on soybeans. And one of the things you do, and Turk, you can jump in here too, when it gets later, what you want to do is you want to narrow your rows down, because planting in a 15 or 20 inch row or 7-inch spacing, what is considered narrow rows, anything less than 20, is like planting 2 weeks earlier in wide rows, 30-inch rows. So if I was planting today, it would be basically in narrow rows, it's like planting April 15th or April 18th, in wide rows. So we can do that. Number two, as it gets later and later, as we get towards the 20th of May, then we start moving our populations up. Yep. Because our soybean plants are going to be shorter, so we need more places to hang pods or more nodes. So you distribute your population with narrower rows and start increasing your population, because your plants are going to be shorter, so therefore you can stand more plants out there. So plenty of time for soybeans. In fact, what is the latest that we've ever seen soybeans plant? This is going to be hard for most people to believe, but in the Boot Heel of Missouri, which is in southeast Missouri, we had a farmer ask for soybeans to be delivered on August 14th. We thought they were crazy, but they were right up against the levee. That black, beautiful soil, high fertility. They planted it, and right around Thanksgiving, they harvested it, and it was in the 30s. and that was August 14th. So I'm not suggesting you wait that long. Personally, I've seen a farmer plant the first week of August in West Point, Iowa, and I follow back up with him. He said he ended up using them as hay beans, but he did get pods and he did get beans in those pods. So the soybean plant can compensate. What about the corn plant? What, should we be earlying up if we get a little bit later, or should we stay the course? What's your opinion on that?
As for right now, I mean, I think we have till, in the in the center part of the, Interstate 80 and south and I-70 and north, I guess, in that little corridor, as long as you can make it through, May 15th, May 20th time frame, I would stick to the plan, because the hybrids that we have chosen for that specific soil type is more important than the dry down. And there's other ways, there's different ways to dry corn down faster by having it out in the field. And one of those ways is plant it a little bit thicker.
Yep.
A shorter ear dries down faster than a big club that you have. That plant is going to actually wick the moisture back out. A healthy plant is going to wick that moisture back out, and Stein corn actually, patting yourself in the back, but Stein corn can handle that increased population. So it's a something that you can do for the corn if dry down is such a big issue for
The
you.
smaller the ear, the faster it's going to dry down. That's
Right.
bottom line how that's going
So
to
to
work.
change
And it makes
maturity.
sense.
Yep.
That
And
does.
I really think when you're pushing a week before June is probably when it's time to think, well, maybe we need to go from 115 to a 110 day, so we don't have such a late, because what you're worrying about is your frost date and making sure that plant hits maturity.
The main reason that you would early a hybrid up is for dry down, because a hybrid will actually drop off a set of leaves to catch up. Right, Turt?
They will adjust. That's absolutely right. They will adjust. We did that planting date study at the tech port, if you remember, and we planted the same set of hybrids on every week for 6 weeks.
And it was a range of hybrids from basically a little over 100 day all the way to 115.
Right, but we planted the same set
Same
every week, and amazingly, when we looked at the average yield
Of each set.
it was pretty darn close all the way through. And even the late plants, I think June 15th was the latest we planted that corn in that study that year. And even that, the amazing thing to me was that June 15th was not all that much wetter at harvest than the stuff that we'd planted early. The difference was the combine date, but we waited to combine some of those later planting dates, and the moisture wasn't all that much difference when you stayed with your planned set of hybrids to start with. Don't change the hybrid mix. Don't plant everything early, because the key to this was, as we know, the most critical time in a corn's life is pollination. And so when you spread out your pollination risk, you also spread out your chances of having a bigger amount of failure with any one hybrid. So again, that spreading that out makes a huge difference. Stay with your mix. Don't start planting everything early. Worst mistake you can make.
So kind of the summary on corn is get the right depth and get the right soil conditions. Be patient. Get your fertilizer on when it works for you. Get that crop in is the critical element. Number two, stay with your hybrid mix. Increase the population a little bit, particularly if you're planting Stein corn, because the shorter ears dry down faster. Smaller ears dry down faster than big club ears. And the corn plant will respond. And at the end of the day, turkey. You talked about some demand. We're building a foundation for demand.
Yes, we are.
And we get that going. A few months from now, all these things that we're worried about may not be here.
I think the trade's already built in. What did somebody was talking earlier before we started airing, that the trade's already looking for 1 million acres off the corn crop and added 1 million acres to the soybean crop. So that's what we're seeing in the markets right now. But eventually, reality will set in, and the crop will get planted, and the trade deals will get done, and everything's going to look a lot better later on. Don't get depressed right now, and just stay positive.
When it's cloudy, it's easy to get depressed. When it's sunny, you're a little more positive. But I've always learned one thing is that, and I always tell folks that I said most of the problems you have only exist in your mind. You know, in other words, we're worried about a lot of things that may not actually exist. In other words, yeah, we're definitely in a crunch situation here, but if, you know, what are other things that farmers can do right now to kind of take the stress in their mind on things as far as getting ready to plant? What are your suggestions? What did you do, Turk, when it was late?
Well, I just made sure that the equipment's in top-notch shape, made sure that when you was ready to go, it was ready to go. Put lights on your equipment so that you can run longer at night, you know, because we know that we're going to be working longer hours to try and get the crop in as quick as we can. And make sure that we have extra help lined up if at all possible, that we can be the more efficient. In other words, you may need somebody else to try and hire some local help to bring stuff to the planter or do some of those things. Think about what you're doing and how you're going to have to stretch your time window to get more done in the same amount of days, and what it takes to make that happen. Sometimes it's more labor, or sometimes it's adjusting how you're bringing fertilizer or doing whatever, make adjustments in your cropping plan as far as the type of fertilizer, all those things that we've talked about. But those are the things to be thinking about. But again, don't overreact and just keep working on that. Make sure that you're thinking about those things rather than, I don't know what else to do.
Being prepared is one of the best ways to get rid of anxiety.
Absolutely.
So actually going out and
Yep.
getting ready, and yeah, that's one of the
Or
best things
also,
can
you know,
do.
you're planning ahead where, you know, things that you were going to get done after planting, maybe you get those things done now so you have that time, you know. You're not wasting your time. You're the most efficient with your time, is like
Yeah,
you said.
there's always work on the farm, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, Ben, I know before we started the presentation, you talked about some farmers said, "Well, I think I'll have to go to the bar." Well, that might be a short-term solution, but we're not suggesting that at all.
You know, if we're all finished, Joe, I wanted to read an excerpt from Naomi Bloom, who was on the Successful Farming here, and it's just a paragraph that I wanted to share. And she said, "The bad times make us tough as nails. Droughts happen, floods happen, agriculture policies and trade deals can make us pull our hair out. Bad times will be followed by good times. What we can do while we wait for the good times is exactly what the closing paragraph of the FFA Creed suggests. I believe that American agriculture can and will hold true to the best traditions of our national life, and that I can exert an influence in my home and community which will stand solid for my part in that inspiring task." Now, it's good to be that as salesmen and anybody out there, being a friend for a farmer. Be that optimistic voice right now. Support your home and your community, and exert a positive influence to others, because at this time there is so much negativity around agriculture right now. There is, you know, a lot of people are looking at the markets and this trade deals and the weather, and at the end of the day, you know, every day is a gift, right, Joe?
That's right. We'll
Every
get
day is
through
a
it.
gift.
And I think
So,
that's a
better times are ahead.
great way to end today's session with some optimism and you know, never give up. That's definitely something you got to keep in your mind. And if you get down, give us a call.
That's right.
Give us a call, because we'll work you through it.
Been through it before,
Yep.
and we're still here.
We're still here. Yep. Well, thanks for watching today, and we appreciate your business, and we'll see you next week.